And welcome back to the Crash the Pond podcast. It is a Wednesday pre-Halloween, Halloween Eve edition, October 30th. And if you're watching the stream on video, you will see that Jake and I are in theme today.
We are.
Sort of.
Kinda.
You
are more in theme than I am. This is not either of us looking like we're in costume, but Felix has a red light that makes him just look straight evil. And he threatened that he was going to throw a curveball at me, so I went back to the old bit of wearing a cutoff shirt and then also dimming my lights as much as I could.
Is the cutoff actually a response to the curveball?
Yes, it 100% was.
Yeah, I don't know about cutoff shirts generally, but I don't know about a cutoff in, what is it now, almost November?
You know?
But you do you. Live your truth.
There's never a wrong or a right time for the cutoff when it comes to the Crash the Pond podcast. I'll wear it anytime I want to throughout the season.
Okay. I mean, you also said no wrong or right, so just making sure that that's noted. But yeah, so we both look a little evil, or Jake just looks like he's in the dark.
Yeah, you know, it's spooky
but it works.
season.
It works.
No,
it's
but
spooky.
that's the thing. It's spooky season. It's got to be dark. It's like we're telling people some ghost stories.
Yeah.
Instead of inviting people to our backyard for a nice little cocktail, have a good time, we're around a campfire right now, about to tell a little bit of a spooky story, and that spooky story may surround the ducks.
Yeah, I feel like we should. I mean, we're not going to do it for the whole podcast, but we should do like when you're a kid, you point the flashlight under your face. Yeah, and you look like a demon when you do that.
That's what I was going for with my theming right now.
Yeah, I think you're there. You're pretty much there.
Yeah,
9 out of 10.
There we go. I'll take
9 out of 10. But yeah, so anyway,
this is great podcasting for the audio listeners.
Yeah, so all of this to say that hope everyone's having a good week. Hope everyone's enjoying the theme of it all. You know, what are we without our themes? What are we without our traditions and our silly things?
Without our bits.
And so my background is also a callback to a time where I actually did this in the Patreon pod, not as a theme, and it became my profile picture in Discord. So
yeah.
Anyway, let's talk about the Ducks, who are coming off a win, a 3-1 win against the New York Islanders. Since you and I last spoke, the Ducks have played the Sharks, a game that they won. Mm-hmm. They have played the New York Rangers, a game that they lost. They have played the New Jersey Devils, another loss. And then last night, a win against the Islanders. So where do you want to start here? Where should we pick at first?
Well, I say we just go chronological, because I think where we should and where we're probably going to end up spending the most time is the Islanders game, just because I think there's a lot that we could talk about with the Rangers, the Devils game, but all of that kind of informs what ended up happening in the Islanders games. And to briefly touch on the Sharks game, because that was such a long time ago at this point now. The last time we recorded those coming off the LA game, we had kind of said the Kings were a good team. The Sharks game was going to be interesting to see, because we'd get more of a litmus test against a poor team and see where the Ducks were at, and especially with how poor the Ducks had played against, or not poor, but they didn't play great against the Sharks to open the season, with the circumstances surrounding that with them starting later. And against the Sharks, the Ducks looked really good. They looked utterly dominant at times. The numbers aren't as great as you would think from watching the game, but they had their stretches where they looked good. And the other really noteworthy thing about that game that is definitely worth touching upon as we continue through it, because obviously the dominating play, all that stuff was great to see, but the noteworthy thing is the power play. And we got so many questions. Everyone was talking about the power play, what needs to happen to it, everything like that, going into last week's podcast and talking about it on last week's podcast. And you were doing, and you still are doing, your Patreon videos on the power play after every game. But against in that Sharks game, we finally saw the Ducks break through on the power play, and they started getting good looks, and then they end up getting a goal from Troy Terry that was not a setup goal, a little bit just kind of not out of the blue. It was Troy Terry making a great play. It was their zone entry, all that different type of stuff, but it wasn't on a full setup play. And then later on in the game, based upon kind of, it almost looked like the confidence that was built from that, they had some really nice zone play within the zone, and it led to Cutter Gauthier taking a shot that left a rebound for Leo Carlson to finish. And so we saw the Ducks get two power play goals in that game, and those were the first two power play goals of the season, and it feels like it's kind of snowballed since then.
Yeah, I agree. And so, looking back to the power plays against the Sharks, I think that you mentioned the Troy Terry goal, and my memory is really poor right now. Is that the one where he scored off the rush?
Yes.
Where he okay.
Yes. Yeah.
So
that was the first power play goal for the Ducks this season.
Yeah, I am now pulling up the clips that I posted on Patreon to refresh my memory. But
Yep.
basically what we saw going into that game was the Ducks really kind of starting to build out their breakout on the power play, and the breakout then feeds into the zone entries, which then feed into your setup, which, it's this whole domino effect. And what we saw in that game, at least this is my opinion, because I have shared this with other people who have not agreed, aka a bunch of people in our Discord, but the Ducks have set up this drop pass that we've talked so much about on the power play. And certain teams, not all teams, but teams are kind of, what they're doing is, instead of just kind of staying back and defending the blue line, they're actually going to send one penalty killer to basically trail the puck carrier to anticipate that the drop pass. So it looks kind of funky, but in this situation on the Terry goal, there was a penalty killer trailing Terry, and what that did is it created all this room in the middle for Terry to just walk in, and he had done that in previous games where he had used that space to walk it in. But this time, the Sharks gave him just a little bit too much space, and even the penalty killers on the wings were so worried about Terry potentially kicking it out to his other wingers that they were backing off. So he just walks in and he does Terry things, and he just rips it on net, and it finds Twine. So it's those little things where, yes, like you said, it's not within a set play. It's not like they're picking apart the penalty kill after setting up, but it does show that there was at least a piece of their power play that led to success.
Yeah. And the other noteworthy thing from this game was we talked about the line changes going into this game. Derek had reported on it, things like that, but that we were going to see for the first time Fabry with Carlson Gauthier. We saw Vetrano, Strome, Terry staying together, and then Zegras, Lundestrom, Killorn, McGinn, McTavish, Leeson. And it was the Sharks. I don't think there were any great takeaways I had from the line changes. We'll get into more of that as it goes on. But the only other takeaway I had from this game was Olin Zellweger looked dominant. Like, this felt like his best performance as a Duck, and it felt like since then it's just kind of steamrolled from there. He just looked like he was all over the ice, entering the zone, everything like that. Like, he just looked dominant.
Yeah, and so getting a win against the Sharks is nice, but
yep.
Judging now, because before the season I kind of thought, oh, well, the Sharks have improved a bit. They've improved their roster, but Celebrini being hurt, and they just won their first game, I think 2 days ago. Mm-hmm. And so maybe not the best kind of gauge for the Ducks of where they're at. So that's why I'm kind of sidestepping this game a little bit, both because it happened a while ago and also just because I don't really have much takeaway. I don't think anyone really should have huge takeaways from a game against this year's Sharks, to be honest.
No, I think the only thing that like kind of you can say about this game is, in hindsight, with the games that followed, it felt like this got the power play going.
Yeah, and that matters. I mean, that matters for confidence. That matters for team building. So all of that is good, but for our purposes of evaluating this team and trying to figure out where they're at, that's a problem. Also, another thing to point out, and this is something that was a frustration heading into the weekend against the Rangers and the Devils, and this will kind of color the conversation around these games, is that the Ducks hadn't really played up until that point teams that were kind of within their tier, within their range. So you're either playing the Sharks, who this year look like it's going to be another another lottery pick, or Rangers and Devils, who are, I mean, at least playoff contenders, and in the Rangers' case, cup contenders. So it's like hard to get a read on this team, on the Ducks, when they're playing this kind of just polarized schedule, basically.
Yeah, I think the only team that you would put in kind of the middle of where the Ducks are at are Utah. You can maybe argue Vegas, just based upon their numbers so far at 5-on-5 this season, but they're still a team with cup aspirations when you look at them. And so the Ducks have just played really good teams. That's just kind of how the schedule has worked out. And so going into the weekend, though, the Ducks played the Rangers and the Devils. You want to just kind of lump these two games together, or you want to break them up?
Well, so I think what's interesting is that in the game against the Rangers, I saw some reactions that were very positive of, hey, they kept it I mean, what was even the final score? I'm now blanking on what the score was. It
was like
2-1.
It was 4-. I thought didn't that have some empty netters in it, or am I misremembering now?
No, it was 2-1.
Okay.
It was 2-1, and I think that there were reactions that I saw online of, they went toe to toe with, a Rangers team that's vying for a Stanley Cup, and they ended up outshooting them, 33-32. But I don't think that game felt particularly close to me. I mean, yes, the Ducks did maybe better than people expected, but they were hemmed in their own zone. They allowed a lot of chances against. They weren't really able to generate a ton. So while, yes, if your expectation was, they're going to go into Madison Square Garden and get steamrolled, they didn't do that. They had pockets within the game where they looked maybe okay, but this wasn't a performance to write home about, in my opinion.
No, I think it wasn't one to write home about, but I think it was just much better than what we've seen in the past from them. I think they definitely did struggle to get offense. I think the other positive from this game was the Ducks only got one power play, but they generated a ton of offense. If you look at like the expected goals for the game, the Ducks, I think, almost generated as many expected goals on that power play as they did throughout the rest of the game at 5-on-5.
Which is the telling stat, right? For good and bad.
Yes. And so there's that. I think defensively, the Ducks look solid, like fine. They didn't look, and I think maybe that's where the positives can come from, that it felt like they kept the Rangers, for the most part, to the outside. They did a decent enough job of stopping them, but it wasn't this like outstanding effort. It was better than I think a lot expected, though.
Yeah, even this notion that they kept the Rangers to the outside, the Rangers got plenty of chances, and Dostal came through. Was it Dostal or Reimer? Reimer against the Devils. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, Dostal's just been fantastic.
Yes.
I mean,
that's something we don't talk about him enough, to be honest, on this show, just because it's kind of like there's so many other more interesting, or not interesting, but intriguing, I guess, tweaks, things like that to discuss. Whereas with Dostal, it's just, he's been good. Like, there's no other way around it. He's just been that good.
He's given them a chance every game he's played.
Yeah. And
that deserves recognition. But yeah, the one takeaway for me from the Ranger game was outside of the 5-on-5 lines looking very ineffective, which is something that, we were both kind of harping on. The one thing that I took away was that the power play looked really good. That the one power play that they got was actually, creating really good chances, getting zone time, and it really feels now like they've kind of, and we'll get more into this later, but that they are starting to find a comfort level with their setup, with their personnel. So that was the silver lining in the Ranger game. Now, was there a silver lining against the Devils, is my question.
Not really.
That's just a bad loss.
That's a bad loss. The Devils are a very good team, and they just kind of ran over the Ducks. They were generating a lot. They were moving the puck a lot. The Ducks really, really struggled to get any offense going at 5-on-5, and you really saw the flaws. The Ducks actually shook up the lines. Now that I'm looking at the lineups for each game as we're going through it, and going from the Rangers to the Devils game, they actually shook up the lineup because of the lack of offense, and that's how Greg Cronin is kind of searching for it right now, trying to figure out what combinations he has, and we'll get into it with the Islanders game. But he bumped Zegras from playing with Lundestrom because that just really wasn't working. We talked about it as potentially working, as how we could see it working on the last podcast.
There was a best case scenario.
Yes.
And that was not materializing.
It did not. And so what he ended up doing was he put Trevor Zegras on the wing with Leo Carlsson to give him a better person to play with Robbie Fabry. Cutter Gauthier, McTavish, and Terry was aligned. Vetrano, Lundestrom, Killorn, Johnston, Strome, McGinn. And
the big problem in that game was that they started off with these new line combinations, and maybe it took like not even two periods for Greg Cronin to basically go back to what he had. He reunited the Terry line somewhat early because the Ducks were just getting so caved in. Pummeled. And it wasn't just like it wasn't just like against the Rangers where yes, they were allowing a lot of zone time, but maybe if you squint hard enough, they weren't allowing that much quality against the Rangers. Here, the Devils were doing it all. They were controlling the play, and when they were in the zone, they were just carving up the Ducks' man-to-man system. All of that movement that the Devils have off the puck, it just created so many breakdowns and miscommunications. And so all of that just kind of destroying the chain that they rely on with their D zone. And they just ate them up. I mean, there's just really no sugarcoating this game. It was a dismal performance. And on one hand, you can say that it's disappointing that they looked so far behind the 8 ball. On the other hand, this is not a team that the Ducks are currently vying to be in the same category as. So although you want to see more progress in a game against a Devils team, this just isn't the measuring stick for me. Yeah. And maybe that's shifting the goalposts a little bit, and I will acknowledge that is maybe at play here. But ultimately, yes, if they had looked great and they had outplayed the Devils, I would be thinking, maybe the Ducks are onto something here. But the totality of that weekend told me that the Ducks are just not at that level quite yet.
Yeah, and I think that no one really predicted them to be at that
level. And that's okay.
Level.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we expected.
Like, none of us predicted the Ducks to be at that level, and it's something they're going to have to build to. And also, it's on the back end of back-to-backs. Like, I think this is something where we could see this Ducks team build through the season. And what they are right now is not necessarily what they're going to be 2 to 3 months from now. And so having these types of performances, while you want to see them perform better, you can build off this. You can learn from it. There's a whole lot of things that can happen in this early season. And one thing that came to mind, actually, for me as I was thinking about this, because the numbers for the Ducks so far through the season at 5-on-5 are just not great. They're worse than the league at 5-on-5 expected goal share. We talked about the teams they've played overall have been tougher teams from a 5-on-5 perspective. And I was thinking about, and this is not to say this is where the Ducks are going to be this season, but you look at the Vancouver Canucks last season, right? And I think back to that because in the early season, I was very much of the opinion that the way the Canucks are playing led to unsustainable results. They were winning games, they were doing all of this, and they were eventually going to come crashing down to earth. And I ended up looking like a fool at the end of the season. And the reason for that was at the beginning of the season, yes, they were winning games largely on the back of Thatcher Demko. They weren't dominating games, things like that. But that's the thing with smaller sample sizes. You can have some games where you're going to be bad, and at the end of the season, that's just a 10-game stretch. And so all this was a 2-game stretch that was poor for the team. Now they have to take the lessons learned from that as they start playing teams that are probably going to be more towards that middle and build on that, learn from that, and build into that where you can start having better 5-on-5 results and eventually not let this be the team from a 5-on-5 perspective that you are throughout the season.
Yeah, and not to shift away from 5-on-5, but in the Devils game, the power play looked good again.
Yep.
The power play was once again looking pretty good. I mean, the highlight for me was Mason McTavish setting up Cutter Gauthier for a one-timer and Gauthier hitting the post. And a really nice play by McTavish, which kind of ended up being a little bit of a preview of what we saw against the Islanders, where he did a really good job of kind of being patient, stick handling in a tight area, and slipping a pass. But in that game, we also saw Troy Terry really taking off as kind of a goal line to face-off circle threat, where he, in that area from the goal line to the face-off circle, maybe the top of the circle, he's really found a niche for himself. Where, for those that don't remember, in the beginning of the season, I was saying that I don't really know if Troy Terry works on the power play because of what we saw last season. And he has proven me wrong, because he has really found a role for himself as that kind of low man, but also a flank guy, where he's got the ability to pass and thread the needle through the Royal Road, through the middle of the ice. But then down low, he's also got the ability to kind of crash the net, stick handle in tight, or pass it across to the far post. So once again, we saw little breadcrumbs in this game of a power play that's finding itself. That maybe has even found itself. I mean, they just look good.
And another thing that's worth noting, we don't talk about this that much, but not looking at 5-on-5, not even looking at the power play, just from a pure penalty differential perspective.
Oh, yeah.
That was a major issue for the Ducks last season. They were taking penalties at an extremely high rate, and the penalty kill still is not great, but that rate that they're taking penalties at has gone down significantly. They are doing such a better job this season at, even when they get hemmed in their zone, they aren't going out of their way and taking bad penalties. They aren't reaching, they aren't hooking, they aren't doing these things. And I'm just kind of looking at some of the numbers, and this is not a per game stat, but this is just a total time on ice. So it's flawed a little bit because some teams have played more than others, but the Ducks currently sit 26th in time shorthanded this season, as compared to they were first in time shorthanded last season. And so far through 9 games, they are doing a much better job at just not taking penalties. And that is a huge step forward. When you have a poor penalty kill, not taking penalties helps.
Well, against the Devils, they only took one true penalty, and it was a bench minor. It was too many men. I mean, because Ross Johnson fought, and Frank Vetrano and Paul Cotter got into it, and it was offsetting roughing penalty. So, yeah, they, even in a game where they were getting outskated significantly, they remained decently disciplined.
Yeah.
I don't remember against the Rangers what the penalty situation looked like. They took 2 penalties against the Rangers, and both of them were on Mason McTavish. And I think
one of them was the offsetting penalty also.
That's right. Yeah. So only one penalty in that game, one like true penalty,
one shorthanded situation.
Yeah. So that's a good sign. I mean, you have to give them credit, and I will agree with what you said about the penalty kill. They're trying to do the diamond. Diamonds are forever. Pressure makes diamonds. I can't think of another diamond cliche, but the diamond is not diamonding.
No, it's not.
Well, because the problem with the diamond is that it gives so much space. It gives so much space, and if you're playing against a good power play, I just feel like it's hard to get away with that. Like, the whole goal is to take away the middle, but there's other ways to score besides the middle of the ice. So anyway.
Yep.
But honestly, sometimes when I rewatch the games, I kind of just skip through the penalty kill. So
yeah,
I'm no expert. It's not really that interesting to me.
Yeah. So. And I mean, this was probably the first game where you could say, I don't think Reimer was bad, but this was probably the first game where the Ducks probably got average goaltending. Maybe average to maybe slightly below average. Not saying that the game's on Reimer, but that's what's just going to happen if you're not going to get the stellar goaltending.
I mean, they would have needed Reimer to stand on his head to
100%
to be in this game, and he was just not at that level, and they lost. But they also again, this game made it very clear, and this is now a great segue into the Islanders game. But this game made it very clear, at least to me, and just even the Rangers game as well, and maybe the whole season, but that something needed to change with the forward lines. That the mix with the forward lines, as great as it was that they found this line of Vetrano, Strome, Terry, there were other issues amongst the forwards, and they addressed that going into the Islander game.
And you aptly put it this way on our Patreon episode, actually, that we recorded, where we did a much deeper dive on the Rangers game. But when just discussing this, or maybe it was text messages where you said this, I can't remember fully. You and I talk way too much. But where it is great that they found this line that works, and Cronin deserves credit for putting together Vetrano, Strome, Terry. But when the Ducks team is contending, and that's going to be in 2 to 3 years from now, is that realistically going to be a driver of a line for this team? Or are the Ducks in a much better position to try to find something outside of that incorporates Terry with some of the younger players, and that can be a line that forms chemistry, and they can build into that and make that kind of a driving line for this team moving forward. And I think that when you think through it that way, and not so much focused on current results, but thinking about the future, it makes total sense to try to make some shifts and move things around.
Well, the key takeaway from that is you want to maybe try to prioritize developing your younger players and putting them in better offensive situations, because ultimately those are going to be the guys you hope to drive success. And that was kind of the elephant in the room going into the Islander game, was that McTavish and Zegras, these are guys that, because at this point it's pretty clear Leo Carlsson is going to be great. That Leo Carlsson is at worst going to be a second line center. And I'm only saying that as like, who knows what will happen, but like at worst he's a second line center. And realistically it looks like he's on track to become a true 1C. And then you have Troy Terry, who when they're contending or when they're pushing for the playoffs is going to start entering his late 20s. but you need another layer of offense. Beckett Seneca is still going to be really young at that point. The Ducks need Mason McTavish and Trevor Zegras, just flat out. If neither of those guys is able to find their footing as a second line forward, I mean, that's going to set this rebuild back just a little bit, because now you're going to have to go find that piece. You know, it's not a death knell to the rebuild, but it would hurt. And so going into the Islander game, Greg Cronin did something that I have personally been clamoring for a while now, which is Trevor Zegras back at center. That is where he is best suited. And this is something I was saying on the video that I did about Zegras when I was talking to myself last night, recording it.
It's a great video. Go check it out. Patreon.com/crashthepond.
Is that with Zegras, there's going to be good and bad, but it's all about the balancing act. At the end of the day, is the good outweighing the bad? And with Trevor Zegras, the good that he can bring offensively at center, with time, with space, with the positions that he's going to be in, is so much higher than what he can offer at the wing. So really, he would have to be really bad defensively to outweigh that at center. And we saw it against the Islanders. He played great. And so that's why I'm just very bullish on Zegras being at center for the foreseeable future. You just have to live with it. Whatever bad there is, you have to keep in mind that this guy is driving offense in a way that he can't do on the wing, and in a way that they don't really have a second line center that can do that right now.
And you brought it up on that video, and it's something where I think I always had gone back and forth, but I think going into the season, I had settled on Zegras at wing is fine. Play him with better players. That's going to be what.
I mean, it is fine.
Yeah, no, but that's what will make him go, and that's what will make him thrive, is playing with the better players. And the center versus wing discussion, it's going to be fluid. It's not going to be that impactful. But especially when watching your video that you put together, like I said, everyone go check it out, where you're just looking at his shifts and only his shifts. So it allows you to just hyper focus in on him. And you just look at his ability to support the puck on the breakout. And I think that was something I noticed so well of. He's just there to be open for a pass, to be able to get the pass off the boards and then make a play to get out of the zone and create a transition going the other way. And you just see that and you're like, yeah, that's what this guy should be doing. He shouldn't be along the boards, having a puck battle, having a chop at the puck to be able to just get it out quick. That's just not where his game is going to be, and that's not where he's going to be thriving as a player. He's someone that should be in the middle of the ice, giving that support to the winger, and that's something a center is just always going to be doing. Yes, there are going to be times he ends up being on board battles. That's just how it works when it's fluid. But as a center, you are most more often going to be in that support role for your winger to give them an outlet to get out of the zone. And that puts the puck on a stick, that puts them in transition. And you saw it a bunch of times, and to Gauthier and Killorn's credit, they were getting him the puck in those situations to get out of the zone and create offense going the other way. And so I think you're spot on there that this just felt like the right call. And just so everyone's aware, everyone listening to this has probably watched the Islanders game, but the forward line changes were to put Robbie Fabry with Carlson and Terry. Vetrano, McTavish, Strome were put back together as a line that was a line last year. Cutter Gauthier was moved onto the wing with Zegras, or moved to Zegras' wing, and Alex Killorn was on the other side. And then you had Ross Johnson with Isaac Lundestrom and Brock McGinn.
Yeah, and to return to the Zegras point, I really want to dial in on what you talked about, where the way that the Ducks break the puck out, and this is probably pretty common around the league, but I don't know well enough to say, is that they pass the puck. So you have your D-man who comes in, retrieves the puck. Now he's trying to break it out. He's going to pass it to the boards, usually, to the wing. And the center's job is to basically do a little loop and skate through the middle and wait for the pass to come to him. So he's like the third puck touch on the way out. And Zegras as a wing for the whole season has been the guy on the boards, like you said, just waiting for the puck and then trying to just bump it over to the center who's trying to fly the zone. And what that does is now he's behind the play if he's successful, and he's just going to be kind of on the periphery the rest of the way. Now instead, like you said, he's the one that's skating through the middle. He's getting those passes in motion, and now the world is his oyster because he's got time, he's got space, he's got a head of steam. And what we know about Trevor Zegras is that's where he thrives. He's a genius level passer. He's an elite level stick handler. There was a play yesterday where he dangled through a guy's skates and then dangled around another guy. Like, put him in situations where he can thrive. So my hat comes off to Greg Cronin because honestly, I think that the Ducks have really been uncomfortable with putting Zegras at center, but they did it, and I mean they won the game, and he was a part of their success. So
yeah, and I guess we talked about that front of it, or that side of it, and also I do want to say this: if you watch all of his shifts, Zegras is good in the defensive zone. Also, like this, you mentioned on that video, and I think it's spot on. This was probably Trevor Zegras' most complete game as a Duck. And so for anyone that's complaining about production, things like that, I think this was one of his most complete performances in a Ducks jersey.
He looked like a second line center. Like he looked like a true 2C.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's what they need right now.
And Leo Carlsson looked like a true 1C in that game also. I think Carlsson and Terry, Fabry meshed well with them also. And that line did a lot of really, really good things. The McTavish line didn't really do a whole lot for me personally. I think a lot of it, Mason McTavish, I think, is still fighting it a little bit.
Unclear what's going on there with McTavish.
It just feels like there's a lot of turnovers coming out of the zone. It feels like Strome and Vetrano are trying to do things to help get the puck out of the zone. It gets to McTavish, and then it's just a fumble, a turnover, things like that to get out of the zone, and it just kills the play going the other way. And so just something has to happen there. Maybe as the season goes on, he's able to find his timing. And then, I mean, the fourth line was not great. Ross Johnston just should not be in this lineup at all. He just looks so behind the play. But overall, what were your thoughts on the Islanders game? Just kind of as a whole, because we haven't really talked about kind of this win for the Ducks. This
the game itself.
The game itself. We've talked about kind of the different pieces, parsed it through, at least from a forward perspective. We haven't really done it from the defense. But I think the defense is kind of been the same for most of the season. We didn't mention Luno drew back in against the Devils for Jackson Lacombe, but then Lacombe drew back in against the Islanders.
Yeah, well, I think the big takeaway for me from the Islander game is that the power play won them the game. I mean, they scored twice in the power play. Two nice goals. You know, the first one, a shot by Vetrano that Carlsson deflects, and then the second one, a great play by McTavish to attack the net and recognize that Terry is open on the other side of the net and gets it over to him. Terry finishes. So that right there is the headline, is that the power play was great. And like that counts for something, right? I know that we want this team to be great at 5-on-5, but special teams, especially the power play, that's your get out of jail free card. I mean, if you have a great power play, it can do wonders for you, even if you're not a great 5-on-5 team. Because at 5-on-5, I still think that this was a work in progress type of game for the Ducks.
Yeah, I would agree it's a work in progress. You look at the numbers, they lost the 5-on-5 battle, but I think there are a lot of positives still to be taken out of this game at 5-on-5 even. Well,
I think the hard part about judging this team at 5-on-5 is that because it's such a small sample, I mean, one game, but even the season, that it's like I have to judge it based on the lines. And for example, I thought that when Carlsson and Terry were out there, the Ducks generally got out of their zone, generally were able to get offense. I thought that when Zegras' line was out there, they got caught a couple times, but I thought were driving play pretty well.
And they won the expected goal share when they were in. I think both those lines did.
Okay, so great. My test is not broken. But then the problem is the other two lines, and you touched on it, like McTavish, Strome, Vetrano. It felt like they got jammed up quite a bit, and the Lundestrom line, Johnston just kills that line's flow. Although, to be fair, McGinn almost scored, but I don't think that was off of that line's play, if I'm remembering correctly. But so on one hand, yes, they did get outplayed at 5-on-5, and there were quite a few shifts where they were just stuck in their zone, where they just couldn't get it out. But I will say that contrary to the Devils game, those extended shifts in their own zone didn't lead to nearly as many breakdowns. And this is where you've got to be careful, because on one hand, yes, they did a better job, but also they're not playing the Devils. So it's kind of a chicken or the egg situation.
Yeah, and that was one thing I was going to just kind of talk about from a building block perspective. And real quick, want to mention this. So Killorn and Gauthier, Alex Killorn also deserves flowers. I thought he looked really good in this game.
Probably his best game of the season.
And Cutter Gauthier also looked, I think, really good. Like I think both of them really looked good. Maybe it's Trevor Zegras effect. But Killorn ended up at 80% expected goal share. Gauthier at 75% expected goal share.
They both got shots off. They both had puck touches.
Zegras was only at 49.9, but I think that's just maybe due to some caught shifts where it wasn't the full line out there.
They did get stuck out there at one point.
And Lundestrom at 51%, Carlsson 41%. Like the issue is McTavish Vetrano, Strome were around 10% each expected goal share. So not great. But where I was going to go is I think there are building blocks, though. I think that even when the Ducks did get caught, like, I think it's a game where I look at the Islanders' shots, and it felt like it was a little bit point shot spammy, which felt like that was kind of where they were getting their shots from. And then it was just essentially send bodies to the net, hope pucks get into dangerous areas, and those pucks land on your sticks. And that happened for the Islanders. I don't know if I view that. You and I are both of the opinion just spamming point shots isn't going to lead to a lot of success, but it can happen in some games. And I think that that's what we saw from the Islanders. And maybe from the Ducks' perspective from defending, I thought that you will take that, and maybe that's just going to happen in some games when you're playing a team like that. But the Ducks kept it to the outside for the most part. But I think from the offensive perspective, while maybe they didn't end up generating as much as they would have liked, I think the way the Ducks were looking to generate offense in the game was a much more sustainable way to score goals long term. It felt like they were really trying to penetrate into the slot area of the ice. They were trying to get really, really really dangerous looks and not just rely on just shots from the outside and just throwing the puck at net. And I think that results in the Ducks getting good looks. And I think that if that continues and they can keep pushing that way, and if they can get the McTavish line doing that also, then I think that we're going to see this team win 5-on-5 battles. And so I think while the numbers don't reflect this game as being a good 5-on-5 game, there are building blocks that they can use from this game to have games where they are able to be dominant at 5-on-5.
Well, and I think part of looking better offensively is also just having the right combinations.
Yeah.
Right? Because I don't know if they really did anything differently except have certain players in better positions. Like Zegras, I think Zegras and Gauthier could be a great combination.
Yeah.
And then Killorn seems to be, I mean, Killorn looked great in that game. And then Karlsson with Terry is just like, I mean, that just has to work. I mean, those guys are made for each other.
It's funny because we saw that for so much of last season, and it didn't click last year for whatever reason, whether that was Terry playing a little bit different, whether that was Karlsson, but with how both are playing this season and how dominant Troy Terry has been, and I think he has been the most impactful skater.
I think Terry's become almost more adaptable this season, where it seems like you can just put him in any situation and he's going to thrive.
I mean, let me know if this is a correct or incorrect statement, but he's the most impactful skater for this Ducks so far this season.
Oh, he's their best. I mean, outside of Lucas Dostal, he's their best
That's why
player.
I said skater.
Yeah, he's their best player. I don't even really think it's that. I mean, I know Leo's look great, but that's really it. Like he is carrying this team offensively, and I think he's the leading scorer, right? Am I getting that right?
Yeah, I think he has a point in every game, doesn't he?
Yeah. So like, I do not keep track of points. This is really embarrassing.
I don't either. Neither of us really do, especially this early on. Like I couldn't tell you how many points Zegras has.
But Terry, both in terms of process and production, has just carried this team offensively.
Yes. Yes.
But you touched on it, and I want to spend like maybe 2 to 5 minutes on this. But
go for it.
Mason McTavish.
Okay.
Let me just ask you a basic question. What is Mason McTavish at this point in his career?
I mean, right now, the only thing he's doing well is the power play. I think he looked good on the power play against the Islanders. He had a really nice net front drive with the puck and then fed it to Terry for that goal. I think he had some nice battles to help win the puck back that led to the first goal. That was the Vetrano shot and tipped by Karlsson. I don't know if he's a center at this point. Like, I don't know, like, we talk about Zegras, right? And you look at where he's thriving. And he thrives when he's getting that puck in the neutrals or in the middle of the ice and able to skate up with it. And Mason McTavish last season, I'll put it this way, I think that he was thriving at that also. And that was kind of what he was billed at, was he was a guy that's going to really help you in transition and moving the puck and creating rushes. And that's what we saw when he was really generating a lot of offense for this team, was creating odd man rushes going the other way. And we're just not seeing that. And I don't know if it's something I talked to, like, if it's just, he looks slower this year. I don't know what it is. I don't know if the puck's just not, it just feels like something's off with him from a speed perspective. Like, it just doesn't look like it's the same. But where I think he is doing well is with board battles, with puck battles in tight spaces, which kind of, as we go back to that conversation we had about Zegras and playing center, it's almost like they should completely be flipped. Like McTavish is really someone that really should be on the wing, and maybe you move Strome, because Strome was playing well as a center. And if you flip those guys and put Strome in that position as compared to McTavish, I think maybe that line will end up being in a better spot. You allow McTavish to be the F1 in on the forecheck also, and be the guy that gets in there and create some havoc, create some battles down low. That is why he's thriving on the power play and why I think he's doing well. And so to me, it feels like, I mean, it's the same thing kind of that we talked about last year with McTavish, that it's almost like he's incorrectly assessed, I guess is a really good way to put it, of he's assessed as this strong defensive two-way center when that was not his game last season. And it's almost like he's being forced to be a center because of that billing, when in reality, he's probably better suited to play on the wing.
It's really hard to say, because I agree with you that last season and throughout his career so far with the Ducks, he has had flashes where he looks really good transporting the puck through the neutral zone and, kind of having these little pop passes over to his wingers to facilitate zone entries, or those like one-handed passes that he has. Like, he has that in his arsenal. But when you take a step back and you ask yourself, well, what is Mason McTavish good at? What is his skill set? And then what are the situations that would bring that out? And if you go back to before the draft, the famous quote from, I think it was Bob Murray, that, he can shoot a puck through a car door. Was it Bob Murray that said that about McTavish? Someone said that.
Yeah.
But
like that.
Basically that he had this very hard shot, and we saw him use it in junior hockey. We haven't seen it a ton in the NHL, and I'm wondering, like you kind of said, maybe we have it backwards, where yes, it's like Zegras. Zegras can play wing. Zegras can be good at the wing, but should he be a wing? And with McTavish, it's like, yeah, he can play center. He can be good at center. But is that actually where you want him to be to maximize his toolkit? And given his great shot, given his ability to protect the puck, I almost wonder if he's the guy supporting the rush instead of the one carrying the puck through the neutral zone, which we know he can do. But if he's supporting the puck, maybe coming in as the trailer or driving to the net, that's going to put him in situations to use that shot of his. And that's ultimately what you want. You want him to get those shots on net. Because I feel like this season, I've barely seen him shoot the puck. Like, just from an eye test level, I feel like he never shoots. And I'm sure the stats might make me look a fool on that.
I am going to look it up right now as we speak.
But I feel like he's just not shooting as much as he should, given how hard and how well he can shoot it. And so I'm wondering if, hey, maybe a shift to the wing would actually bring out those qualities. Like you said, where he can control the puck along the wall and dominate play that way physically. He does have a playmaking instinct to him, so he's still always going to have that, but just put him in situations where he can succeed.
Sample size theater, as always, with this. But last season, individual Corsi 4 per 60 was at 12.84.
So that's shot attempts.
Yep, shot attempts per 60, and then shots on goal per 60 minutes of ice time, 6.85. This season, individual Corsi 4 per 60, 9.56. Individual shots on goal per 60, 4.78.
So that's way down.
Yeah.
So, okay.
He's taking about 3 less shot attempts per 60 minutes of ice time. So about 1 less shot attempt per game, more per game that he's playing.
Less shots are finding the net too. So
yeah, yep,
yeah. So that's a bit of a concern, and I honestly think McTavish could be good on Zegras' wing, which would be a hell of a role reversal given how both players have been billed. But it's just something to think about. And this game against the Islanders, let's give it a little time. Let's give it a few games for him to maybe find his footing and maybe get his season underway. But so far, I'm just wondering about his future. Because, hey, if he becomes a wing, that's still fine. I mean, if he's a top 6 winger and Zegras is a second line center, I mean, that's what you need out of these guys. You need them to become top 6 forwards, ultimately. It doesn't matter how they get there.
Yep, okay. Exactly. And then other part of this, we talked about already.
This has been the forward show.
Yeah,
I feel like we've had shows where we've only talked about the defense, and now it's like all forwards. Yeah.
I think it's it makes sense because right now it seems like the offense has been the struggle for this team, and especially with all the tweaks that are being made with the forward group, that's kind of what's been changing a bunch. The defense has been a bit set so far. Like
the defense is pretty much set. I mean,
yeah, like Zellweger is playing. It's funny because remember the first game of the season we were talking about Zellweger playing like 10 minutes of 5-on-5 time,
13 minutes, yeah,
overall stuff like that. Whereas he's now leading the team in ice time in each game basically, and he's now quarterbacking the first power play unit. Like Greg Cronin has come a long way from playing him a small amount of ice time, and it's been completely well earned by Olen Zellweger. Like he has earned every single minute that he's getting right now with how he's been playing. But I guess the only other piece from the forward group is just the fourth line. Ross Johnston, I know I mentioned this, should not see the ice. He's not the reason the Ducks lost against the Devils. He's not the reason they won or would have been the reason they lost against the Islanders. But we're going from having a fourth line where if you look at I'm thinking about like the very first Sharks game, right? Where that line basically won the Ducks that game. And like we talked about it then, like maybe they're not going to win you games that often, but they give you the opportunity to do that if you have Lundestrom, Leeson, McGinn. And you look at how that line performs when Ross Johnston is there, and they're just missing another player that can just keep up with the pace. Like it's honestly that simple. Like Ross Johnston, he's not fast enough to keep up with those guys. He takes like there was a play against the Islanders where he just took a really bad angle on the forecheck, and it just led to a really easy exit. And I think against the Devils, he was on the ice for one shot attempt 4.
That seems hard to do.
Yeah. And so, like, it's just he shouldn't be on the ice. Like, he shouldn't be on this team at this point in time. Like, well, I know there are people
Here's my question, though.
Okay.
Greg Cronin doesn't seem to be agreeing with what you're saying because Brett Leason's been scratched 2 games in a row, and against the Rangers, he played the lowest time on ice of anyone on the team with 844.
I don't know if it's
he's back in the doghouse.
I mean, maybe you call up a Sam Colangelo. Maybe you call someone has to be in this lineup other than Ross Johnston. Like, but does the coach see it that way though? I
mean, that's the question for me.
No, I know. Like, I'm just giving my opinion on this, but we'll see. Right.
Well, that's the thing is I feel like Greg Cronin has correctly assessed the issue with the kind of middle 6. Or the top 9, we'll just go with that for the Ducks, and I think he's made some good adjustments. But then the fourth line, it's like he's almost reverted back to some kind of suboptimal combination. So we'll see. Also, one thing I didn't really think about enough watching yesterday's game, but third game in 4 nights. I mean, I feel like the back-to-backs get a lot of the play as the fatigue situation, but 3 games in 4 nights is really tough too. And so maybe that contributed to some of their kind of tired-looking shifts where they're stuck in their own zone. I don't know. But a good win for the team. I actually, that game gave me a lot of reason to be optimistic. And that's what I was saying over the weekend is that, they have this stretch where they're playing the Islanders, the Penguins, and the Blackhawks. And it's like, yes, disappointing maybe to some that they didn't perform to that level against the Rangers and the Devils, but that's not the team that you really want to see the growth against. It's a game against, let's say, the Islanders, a team that's kind of in that middle tier of the league, or the Penguins, who are also in that middle tier, and then the Blackhawks, who are directly in the Ducks' same tier. So far, so good. They pick up a win against the Islanders. It wasn't necessarily the prettiest. Thursday, I believe, they played the Penguins.
Yep. Tomorrow.
And the Penguins are also kind of a tire fire right now, so that'll be interesting. And then the Blackhawks. So maybe next time, I mean, I don't know when we're going to podcast again, but maybe they win both those games. So we'll see.
Yep.
Also, another side note is that did John Gibson travel with the team? I think he did.
I think he did.
And he hasn't actually dressed yet.
And we did not see James Reimer on waivers today.
Nope. And so
I guess he could be put on waivers tomorrow and be like, I think there's a way to do non-roster waivers so that essentially he's put on waivers and then is not on the roster anymore, even if he hasn't cleared yet.
Is there a goalie controversy right now?
I don't think so.
Like out of 10, how much of a goalie controversy is there?
I mean, I don't think there's a controversy. I think
I
think both guys should be playing equal amount. Like, it's that simple.
Does Lucas Dostal though not look like he should just be a starting goalie right now?
Yes,
playing 60% of the games or whatever.
But I also think that you don't want to throw him into that this season. I think you have John Gibson. Because you don't want to run him into the ground in his first season at this.
Obviously you're not going to play him 70 games or whatever. But I'm just saying, like, he, as the guy who clearly has that pole position, as the one who's going to play more of the games than not.
Like, is it a controversy with how good he's played? Though,
well, it's a controversy because the other guy is making over $6 million and has a reputation.
Yeah, I mean, Dostal played more games last season than Gibson did.
Yeah, but injuries.
I mean, Gibson's been hurt for the first little bit, so that could lead Dostal to be...
Gibson's also always been hurt, but, neither here nor there.
My point is that you still are probably going to end up with that, with Gibson missing essentially the first month of the season.
Well, I'm just saying in a vacuum, just erasing the kind of circumstances. Right now, do you think that Lucas Dostal should just play more than John Gibson? Does Lucas Dostal give this team a better chance to win on any given night?
With how Gibson played last year versus Dostal right now, yes.
He's playing great. He looks dialed in, and it's not that surprising given what we saw from him last year. I think the difference this year is the consistency. Granted, it's a short spurt of games, and really the magic to be a great starter in the NHL is you have to be consistent. You don't necessarily have to be, hitting home runs every night, but you have to be able to get on base. And Dostal hasn't shown that yet. So that is the benefit. I'm not saying that Gibson shouldn't play at all. I think that there is a huge benefit to having Gibson there. But if Dostal keeps this up, the rumors and the people asking for Gibson to be traded, that's only going to go up because that'd be an expensive backup. So,
looks like the Dodgers have won the World Series.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Well, you know what? Good for their fans, I guess.
Congratulations to our listeners that are Dodgers fans, coming from a salty Angels fan.
I'm a Giants fan, so
that is very sad.
I mean, they should have won. They should have won multiple by now.
Yes. So sad that Ohtani left and now instantly wins. But you know what? Hopefully this just makes Artie Moreno look worse and worse and worse and worse and worse.
Did you see the translated interview with Tomáš Suchanek?
No.
So apparently, he was really, really sad about his injury, and he mentioned the opportunity to be the backup to start the season. And I don't know if he said that as if that was a real thing on the table, but
really,
yeah,
huh?
Yeah, this was posted in our Discord.
Yeah, I missed that with, I guess, being busy with other stuff. Wow, no, I missed that.
But I don't know if he meant that as that's what was expected or promised or whatever, but maybe that there was just a door that was open for him to potentially play this season. So I don't know if that would have been necessarily beneficial for him though. I feel like
he should have been playing games in the AHL.
He needed more AHL seasoning, but that would have been interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, Suchanek and Dostal in that would have been very interesting.
Yep.
So, and also I wanted to circle back a little bit because you brought him up, but Olen Zellweger just looks like he's arrived. I mean, yeah. He looks so good.
He's so much fun to watch.
Well, what's interesting to me, and it's a lot like the Zegras thing, and I feel like this is a beautiful thing when you follow a player long enough, is when you actually start seeing the growth. So like with Zegras yesterday, we saw him just look like a legit NHL center in all facets of the game. And with Zellweger, it's his first full season, and he's killing plays, he's stopping rushes, he's breaking it out great, he's helping out the power play. Like, he's just doing it all. He looks like a veteran defenseman at times, and it's just crazy how his growth curve has just been insane. So yeah, we'll see. Maybe this is just like a hot streak for him, but he looks pretty damn good right now. And I guess as a subplot of that, I just don't know. Tristan Luneau got into the lineup this weekend, but it almost felt more like a product of Lacombe. It being a back-to-back, Lacombe maybe being not quite up to speed conditioning-wise yet and needing the night off. And we talked about this in the Patreon pod over the weekend, but at some point, the way that Zellweger is playing, the fact that Lacombe is, he's older, he's a guy that you want in the lineup, maybe Luneau is just going to have to go down to get playing time by default. So.
Yeah. And I don't think that's a horrible thing. Like,
no, I mean, he needs to play. Like the thing with Luneau is he just needs to be playing wherever that is. Obviously not the ECHL. That's too low. But having watched 10 minutes of ECHL hockey this season, I'm like, I never want to do that again. Holy crap, that was bad. But,
yeah.
But I don't think he looks bad right now. I just think the game looks a little fast. It looks a little fast for him out there, and I don't think the AHL would hurt at all. In fact, it could probably help. So
yeah. What do you make? Shyster in our YouTube chat brings up Zellweger's. What's his expected goals against? So I'm gonna look it up right now. But I know it depends on the game that you're watching him. But I'm just fumbling all over this. But in last night's game, some of the numbers that he was putting up were not that great. But so
for me personally, I don't put a lot of stock into the numbers so far this season because one game can basically completely change the number. And so it's kind of like I don't really trust it. The sample isn't big enough yet. So I'm at this juncture, I'm a little more trusting what I see. And then as the sample grows statistically, that's when I start leaning on the numbers a little bit more because one bad loss or one great win can completely change how your overall numbers look. So.
Yeah, and I don't think we're really overhyping his defensive prowess, really. I think we're just saying he's really coming into his own, and he's going to have some warts.
If people disagree, by all means, let us know. Maybe we're off on Zellweger, but to my eye, he has looked great. So
yep, I would agree with that. All right, anything else that you want to touch on before we get into some questions?
I don't know how it feels like this hour just went by like in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I don't understand it. But not really. I mean, I think I have some issues with the way, maybe Greg Cronin's system and all of that, but that's maybe a conversation for another day. Why don't we get into some questions?
All right. So we're going to start with our Patreon exclusive Discord. Go to patreon.com/crashthepond where you can get access to our Discord there at the $2 here. And you can get access to our podcast questions channel where you can ask us questions very, very quickly. And we will get to them on the show. So Shake and Wing said, with the way that Strome seems to be playing, do we consider only the Killorn signing as a bad free agency contract by Pat Verbeek? Why is Strome better this year? Why did Cronin and Aikens not do this?
Well, I think playing with Troy Terry.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to put it really simply, I think that Ryan Strome is a complementary player. And so at the end of the day, he's only going to look as good as who he's playing with. He does he's been doing some good things, but he needs that quality of a line mate, I think, to really bring it out of him. He's just not a play driver. And so, yeah, if you're centering, like, let's say a Frank Vetrano who might have some issues, or you're on the wing with a Mason McTavish who's also having some issues, you're just not going to look as good. Your numbers are not going to be as good. You're not going to have as many points. And so he just needs to play with good players to really get the most out of him, which maybe that makes you question the contract a little bit, but I think he's been good this season, and he's also played with good players. So,
and then also on the Killorn front of that is, I mean, it's not aging great, but we're early on, and I think if he can play like he did against the Islanders and can continue that, I think that they can get value out of him. Maybe it's not going to be, or it likely is not going to be at the cap hit that they signed him for, but
I mean, it's also possible, and I know that a week ago or 2 weeks ago I was saying the Killorn contract was a mistake, and I still believe that. But maybe playing with Leo Carlson and Cutter Gauthier, who are just all speed, all kind of north-south, maybe for an old, slow guy, that's just not a good fit. Maybe the pace with a Zegras and Gauthier, maybe the Zegras being at center will kind of slow things down for him a little bit. I don't know.
Yep.
So,
Rooch said, I hate to say it, but what do you do with Alex Killorn if you were in Cronin's position? This was sent before the last game, so I think we've kind of answered that with this.
Well, you try to put him in a position to get the most out of him, because that's what you do with any player. So,
yep. Ron Cosmo said, you guys will sometimes mention a player's underlying metrics. Could you give an explanation of what these metrics are, what websites you're using to see them, and what general stats or metrics do you look at when evaluating a player, line, team? So underlying metrics typically always goes back to shot-based metrics. And so Corsi 4, to put this pretty quickly, is just shot attempts 4. And then there's a bunch of websites, whether it's Money Puck, whether it's Natural Stat Trick. Those are kind of the more rudimentary ones. The ones you and I use are Evolving Hockey and Hockey Viz, but they all come up with their model. And what they do is they take not just the shot attempts, but they will take the unblocked shot attempts due to some data and things like that. So, and for each shot that is unblocked, based upon the context around it, location, things like that, they assign a percentage chance, or the model assigns a percentage chance of that shot going in. And that is as simple as I can put what an expected goal is. It is just the percentage chance of that shot going in. And then
just to quickly add, what we're looking at is the total share of shot attempts and expected goals, and that player's out there. So when that player's on the ice, what is the end result? Is the team getting out shot attempted or out expected goal, or are they winning that share? Because over time, the more you do that, the more you expect your team to actually get the goals.
Yeah, and someone there's a logical side of this, of just thinking about it from, if you're the team out there and you're getting the vast majority of the dangerous looks, you're going to score more goals than if you're the team not getting the vast majority of the dangerous looks. And so there's that logical side. But on the flip, in addition to that, there's also been studies done that teams that have a higher expected goal share throughout the season are more likely to have success long term and have more sustainable success. So it's a mixture of both just the logic side of it, plus also studies that have been done about how to have a more successful team long term. And so expected goal share is pretty much the gold standard, I think, at this point, in terms of what you look at, because it blends both shot quantity and shot quality into one kind of stat that you go through. And so looking at that is a big factor. And then in addition to that, you can look at things like goals above replacement. You can look at synthetic goals, things like this, that are more in-depth topics than we'll get into here. But they kind of start to factor in things like finishing and things like that for each individual player.
Yeah, and the other thing that we look at is the tracking data by Corey Schneider, which he's tracking the individual events on the ice, like zone entries, breakouts, things like that. But we don't really get access to that data until usually the end of the season. Technically, we could access it as we go along, but it's not as pretty during the season.
It's also, there's just not a large enough sample size. With a lot of this information, you want to build a large sample because, like we've talked about on the show, single games can really impact the data when you're in a smaller sample size. When you're in the first 10 games of the season, one good, one bad game can really impact the data. But once you build up a 40, 50 game sample, a single game is not going to change things that much.
Well, it's just funny that we've been doing this long enough where we started off being like the stats show.
Yeah.
And we did a lot of like explainers and primers, and we've been doing this long enough now where like we've kind of assumed people just know what we're talking about.
Yeah. Yep.
And it's like we have to maybe re-explain it. It's probably not a bad idea.
Yes, and thank you, Ron, for this question. I think it's perfect timing with the start of the season, and we definitely always get new people listening at the start of the season. So that's another great part of the Discord. Just as another plug for it, you have access to conversations that Felix and I are having all the time with different people in there. If you have questions about any stat, what we use, what we like to look at, where we go to, not only are we a good resource in there to ask, there's plenty of other people in there that are also very, very smart people that like looking at the data that you can ask those questions to.
Yep.
So moving on, we got a question from John saying, with Colangelo seeming to bloom into a future NHLer, does moving Vetrano at the deadline make more sense?
Well, I feel like those are almost two separate questions because I'm not sure if those two things should be connected necessarily. Because yes, Sam Colangelo through 7 games for the goals has 4 goals, 3 assists, 7 points. But I feel like you can kind of have it both ways. If you want to keep Vetrano, you can do that, and you can just not play Ross Johnston and have Sam Colangelo in your lineup. Like, I feel like you can have it both ways here. So I reject the kind of premise a little bit, but I guess just your quick take on what do you think is going to happen with Vetrano?
I think he gets extended.
Yeah, same. I don't see them selling him off for picks.
I mean, Verbeek kind of made it clear last deadline that
that was the time.
Really, well, no, not only that, but he wanted to be in a playoff race this year. And I think even if they're not fully in that, I don't really see him selling. Like,
yeah,
I don't really
like
see
Fabry.
like, I don't see the benefit in acquiring more picks when I think he's trying to make this team better.
Yeah.
And so I think I just don't see him looking to sell a guy like a Vetrano. Maybe a Fabry, maybe a Dumoulin, but I just don't see it with Vetrano. Patrick asked us, did the Sharks pull Will Smith out of college too soon? How would you manage his development moving forward? Should he go to the AHL?
I feel this is a trap question because I was very low in Will Smith last season. I think that they had to take him out because I think they were worried he wasn't going to sign. And I think that this was just their way of getting him to do that with Celebrini. I've watched a little bit of him this season, and he looks really bad. I think he just needs to play in the AHL, to put it simply. So, I don't think our listeners are too interested about the Sharks, so I want to spend a ton. Like, the question is interesting. Nothing against the question, but yeah. AHL.
Yep. Brad said 3 years from now, which player on the active roster, no Beckett, are on the team?
Oh, boy.
3 years from now, McTavish will be on McTavish, Terry, Zegras, Carlson, Gauthier, Zellweger, Minchikov.
Not Fowler. Gudas probably. 3 years
probably.
from now? 3 years? I mean, he might be retired at that point, but let's just say Dostal.
Vetrano.
Yeah, probably. Fabry?
Notice how I slipped in Zegras there?
You did. I mean, to me, that's uncontroversial.
Yeah.
But to every athletic writer, that is like very controversial. Remember how the entire summer, literally every blurb about the Ducks mentioned a Zegras trade rumor?
Yeah.
Good times.
Maybe the controversial take, I don't know if Jackson Lacombe will be on this team in 3 years from now.
Well, people are bringing it up in our chat, and the Ducks have a lot of defense prospects. And it's always a tough situation because you don't want to count your eggs before they hatch. Almost said chickens before you hatch. But you don't want to count your eggs before they hatch because some of those guys might not pan out. So you don't want to necessarily trade a guy because you have a bunch of prospects. But the Ducks basically did that by trading Jamie Drysdale because they were so confident with Tristan Luneau. So I wouldn't be surprised if Lacombe was there. Oh, Luneau will be on the team.
Oh, yeah. Luneau will also. Players on the active roster, which he is. He also said, will Gibson still be the number one goalie when he returns?
I just don't think there's a number one goalie on this team right now. I think it's just going to be a platoon situation. Yep. Yeah.
And when will/should Cronin land on 4 solid lines?
Well, it's a 1-game sample, but I think we may be approaching that.
I'm also like, there's a lot of this out there about like Cronin shuffling lines and things like that. And I'm a fan of it because I think he should be doing this. If things aren't working, the line should get shuffled. Like, he should be trying. Like, this is what a head coach should be doing. Like, a head coach should be changing things up. Even if there's a line that's working, if you can try to find ways to tweak it, he's trying to find ways to tweak it to improve it. So I don't know if it's like a question of when will/should he land on 4 lines. I think it is a situation of he should be doing this as things are happening and finding those best combinations. And it's not a quick and easy thing to always do.
Well, also, I think that there were people that were upset that the Ducks split up the Strome, Vetrano, Terry line, and I get it. They've been great, but you outlined it earlier. You want to maximize your young players. That is the priority here. But also, you kind of had to split them up to get the other 2 lines going. Like, that's the thing, is that there was no, to improve the other 2 lines, the non-4th line and the non-Carlson line, there was no way to do that just mixing up those 2 lines, I think. I think getting Terry off of Carlson's line, that was the first domino to really elevate another line. Getting Terry off of Strome's line. So, yeah, I applaud Greg Cronin for doing it. And also, now that you know you have a great line with Strome, Vetrano, Terry, you can always go back to it. So, yeah, that's like you said, that's a coach's job, and he's doing good at that. So,
Salami Sandwich said, there's still a lot of hockey left to be played, but who are you projecting for the Stanley Cup?
God, I don't even know what's going on around the league.
I'm looking at some numbers right now because I
I couldn't tell you what's going on.
Do you know who's second in expected goal share this season?
The Wild?
Your Washington Capitals.
I mean, I tried to tell you. I did not expect that, but
yeah, it's small sample, to be clear. Like, there's still a lot to be played. I mean, I know they're off to a rough start. I know McDavid's out. I still have a hard time not picking the Oilers.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And then in the East, I mean, it's the usual suspects.
Yeah,
I mean, the Hurricanes,
maybe this is the year the Hurricanes get over the hump and make the Cup final.
The Rangers have a healthy 55% expected goals percentage.
But they were leading the league, and it's been falling down. So maybe they fall off.
They probably will.
Sean Siebold said, do you think Mason McTavish could be a solid winger? We kind of talked about it, but yes.
Yes.
Sean 11 said, thoughts on why there seems to be a reluctance to have Minchikov on the power play? Feels like they're not maximizing the power play potential by not having him on the ice.
So this is an interesting question because there have been games where they've used, I think, 4 different defensemen on the power play. Or 3 different defensemen. There's been games where they've used Zellweger, Luneau, Fowler, and sometimes Lacombe. Mm-hmm. And Minchikov has not been in those rotations. And my theory on that is I just don't think they trust him to handle the puck at the point.
Do you want my theory on it?
Yeah.
My theory is that I think you look at Zellweger. Zellweger's not being used in a penalty kill role at all.
Oh, okay.
Whereas
I see.
Minchikov is being used in the penalty kill role, and so I
is
think
Fowler. So Fowler's in the PK,
but Fowler's not really on the power play right now. Like Fowler's not a consistent. Fowler will jump in here and there, but he's not consistently on the power play. It's Zellweger. I guess Lacombe is on the penalty kill, so maybe that puts a hole in it.
I just think they don't necessarily trust Minchikov
on the power play.
I just don't.
Which is weird because like his game is just all about fluidity. Which works.
Yeah, but he's so aggressive that maybe sometimes they think, oh, the other guys aren't going to cover back for him or whatever. I also just think that the other guys are just playing, like Zellweger's just playing well.
Yeah, like Zellweger should get, I think Minchikov should be on the other unit, though.
I also don't think, this is maybe a hot take, but I don't think that the point man is that important. Like it can, if it's the wrong guy, it can be destructive. As we've seen with Cam Fowler over the years. But I think that that's the part that I'm less concerned with. And Zellweger's just so good that he's carrying the day. So.
But Blackhawk said, do you think anyone is going back down before the 10-game mark, or is the roster pretty set barring injuries? I think the only thing I could see potentially happen is Luneau getting sent down.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, who else would go down? Gauthier?
I don't think Gauthier. I think Gauthier
benched again.
I think Gauthier is
benched again. Benched again. I mean, he wasn't benched, but he was.
He wasn't benched in the context of what a benching typically entails.
In the last 2 shifts where he could have gone out there in the game, they put Lundestrom in his spot, which is kind of interesting, right? Because yes, you're putting a more responsible guy there. Also, maybe they're worried about Zegras' face-offs. And so they want someone who can step in if he gets kicked out of the circle. But like I don't hate it from a micro, let's just win the game perspective. But I also think like these are the reps that he needs, right? Like what's good for Trevor Zegras when he's a rookie is good for Cutter Gauthier when he's a rookie. Like you need to get the reps. So also, did you notice that Fabry was taking a lot of the face-offs with Carlson?
Yes.
I thought that was interesting because has he been a center?
He's been taking a lot of face-offs in general. Against the Rangers, when the Ducks had the goalie pulled, he was taking all of the, like, it wasn't Strome, it was Robbie Fabry out there taking the offensive zone face-offs in the 6-on-5 situation.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting.
So
I mean he's
if he's winning, I mean, you and I aren't the biggest face-off importance person. The 6-on-5 late in a game, I think, is a place where you would that is where you want to win that. Because you're trying to get the puck back quick in those situations. And so from the sequencing perspective, outside of those types of situations or power play, I'm not someone that's going to really care as much as everyone else is going to make it out to.
He's 46% in the circle this season. So it's not like
Fabry?
it's not like he's been that great. But that is something that's come up a lot is that like Carlson and Zegras are both really bad at faceoffs. But that's just, they have to learn somehow. They have to take them to
and
learn.
not only that, like if the Ducks end up being like a team where those guys are driving offense and they're just bad at faceoffs, like you just live with it because they're still like good. Like give me a good player who's bad at faceoffs than a bad player who's good at faceoffs. That's the whole like conversation around this and where all of this started with like us talking about faceoff importance and everything like that is there's this huge importance put on faceoffs in general from a hockey fandom, hockey culture. And while it's always going to be better to win them than lose them because you get the puck back, there's the whole thing that happens after that.
They really matter in specific situations.
Correct. And so you want to just have a good player on the ice. And if they just so happen to be bad at that one little thing, then it is what it is, and you learn to deal with it, and you can have a successful team outside of that. I think the Avalanche...
Also, you can just have another guy take them if you're really that worried.
Well, I think the Avalanche, when they were like at their peak, they weren't a good face-off team.
So, Leo Carlsson has taken 58 face-offs this season. Do you want to guess his face-off percentage?
20%.
24.7.
I knew it wasn't good.
It's really bad.
Yeah.
It's real. Last year he was at 34%.
I guess the other part of it is typically when you're talking about a guy being bad at faceoffs or good at faceoffs, we're talking about a guy like 45%, 40% being bad, and 55
24 is really
like that,
bad.
Yeah, that's on the other level of it. So fair.
Well, here's what's interesting is that McTavish is at 46.9% this season, and he was at 51% last season. Is that why he's still a center? Is that it right there?
That is the other part of it is I feel like way too much importance is put on faceoffs when evaluating if a player should be a center or not.
Like,
right?
Is that the entire explanation for why he's still a center?
I think people look at that way more than they actually look at the entire conversation that we had about why Zegras should be center with breaking out the puck. People are so focused on faceoffs because that's the identifiable difference of center takes a faceoff. And so if a guy's bad at faceoffs, they're like, shouldn't be a center instead of looking at the nuance around it.
And also, I just think that right now with Zegras at center, you just can't be mad if he's losing faceoffs because he took 85 faceoffs all of last year. The year prior, he took over 300. He's not taking them, so you can't expect him to be good at it. Career average for Zegras, by the way, is 40% in the faceoff dot.
Let's keep getting into questions. We'll go to Twitter and then Twitch and YouTube will come to you after that. But Hockey South asked us, good evening. With all of last night's scrambled egg lineups, outside of Minchikov and Dumoulin as the top pair, is there any line or pair that we can plan on seeing Thursday? And then also asked, why isn't Zegras on the power play and confidence? And he mentioned his confidence in the coach is waning. I think all the lines that we saw against the Islanders will stay, and same thing with the pairs. We talked about it, but I have no issues with these lines that Cronin has been putting together and the tweaks that he's been making and changes he's been making because stuff wasn't working.
Yeah, and Zegras is on the power play. So,
well, why isn't he on power play 1, I guess? The one with Carlson Terry.
I mean, power play 1 is crushing it right now. So
exactly.
I wouldn't touch that at this point.
And I also think that him and Terry are kind of the same type of talent in terms of what they're doing on the power play. Like, you look at the other unit, and Zegras is driving that unit, and they've also looked dangerous.
Yep.
Like, I just wouldn't really tweak much because both units
look good.
We looked at last season's power play, right? And we would get so frustrated at how quick they would change it because it felt like the second unit just wasn't. They were just spamming shots. They weren't looking for dangerous looks. It was the unit that was the old guys, static, the veterans, that type of thing. And there was the meritocracy quote from Newell Brown.
Oh, we've come so far.
And this year, that actually feels like it's relevant. Like the meritocracy between these two units actually feels relevant because of the amount of talent on the two units. Like Frank Vetrano's on the first unit, or was on the first unit versus the Islanders, and then Cutter Gauthier was put down onto the unit with Zegras. And that doesn't feel like a demotion. Like both of these units are very dangerous.
It feels very fluid too. It doesn't necessarily feel like there are certain guys who are mainstays on the top unit, but they do play around with the other pieces. Yeah. So like Carlson and Terry are obviously mainstays, but then outside of that and Zellweger, but they've got McTavish up there.
Zellweger, I wouldn't even say is a mainstay. Last game was the first game second game that he was in that unit. Lacombe was there for a while.
True. So it is very fluid, and I just don't think we need to worry about the power play right now. in the negative sense. Like, it is playing well. Everything is basically working. So,
yep,
I would say just enjoy it.
Yep. Trevor Zegras said, and then on the confidence in Cronin, I know there's a lot of people out there that are starting to sound the alarms on Greg Cronin.
You mean the entire Ducks Reddit saying fire Cronin?
Entire Ducks Reddit. It was like 5 or 6 posts in a row, and looked at that because someone had mentioned that to me, and so looked at that quickly. Like, we mentioned this against the Kings. It's 8 games in. Mentioned it on Twitter after the Devils game. I did, you did, that this team has played some tough teams to start and have not looked good against those teams. They looked good against Utah. I almost said Utah Jazz. Looked good against Utah.
That's what I said last week or 2 weeks ago.
They look. I think they look good against Vegas. They look good against the Sharks. And now you can add the Islanders. 5-on-5 didn't look great against them, but there were building blocks there. I think we're going to find out just a lot more of where this team is at as they're starting to play more of a different, or a more
different
wide
caliber of teams,
wide variety of teams. And that's why the whole conversation of it's just early it may sound condescending to some people, but that's the reality of this. Is you just need to see more of a team. Like, you can't just be making sweeping judgments on a team after 9 games. You just can't.
The sport doesn't work that way.
Can I say one other thing?
It's your show. You can do whatever you want.
The Ducks are above 500. Just from you and I aren't big standings people this early, and like we talked about, it's 9 games. It's really not that large of a sample, and it might not be sustainable. Sorry, the Ducks are exactly at 500. They are 4-4-1. They have 9 points in 9 games.
And judging from their schedule, that's almost about where you'd expect them to be.
If this Ducks team ends up at 82 points, if they end up at 500 to finish the season, that is a successful season.
That's a huge step.
Like, that's the other part of this to me that's just like so fascinating is that...
Yeah, but Jake, like, they have to be beating the Rangers and Devils. Like, don't you understand?
I don't know when the expectations got so out of whack that... like... being a 500 team is a huge like negative.
Well, I think it's also just how they've looked in certain games.
Sure, yeah. but it's to the point of like, I think a lot of people that might be freaking out, they are also kind of looking at the wins and losses of it all.
Yes.
And so it's like they're a 500 team.
I think honestly, the way they've played is about probably what this feels like what we should have expected. You know, they've struggled. They also look good. They're a team that's finding its way. Yeah, there was something else I wanted to say.
Well, while you think on that, I have a question from Trevor Zegras. One question for tonight. When do you think Getzlaf will get his number retired, and does he get a statue? I'm going to say no to the statue, and I think at this point, my best guess is it feels like they're waiting for Perry to retire.
Yeah.
Like, that's what it feels like to do in the same season.
He doesn't even work for the team anymore. He's not even in the area, so like he's just kind of out of sight, out of mind maybe.
Well, yeah, but I'm surprised they didn't retire his jersey the first season after he retired.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was surprising to me, and then I thought maybe it was for the 30th, and then they didn't do that. And so the only thing I can really think of, because there's no way you don't retire his number, so the only thing I can think of is they're waiting for Corey Perry to retire and then retire them in the same season.
And how do you feel about a joint jersey retirement?
I wouldn't do it. I think each guy should get their own night.
But what if they both want it?
If they both, I mean, it's for them. If they both want to do it, sure.
It's their night.
Yeah. Like,
so
who am I to say on that? And then got this question from Luis Alberto Johansson. Question tonight's podcast is, he read something the other day about the Ducks trying to trade Zegras to the Canadians for Line A. Is that true? No. No.
Where did you read that? Oh,
yeah, don't. God. If you read that from one of those weird aggregating sites, don't read that website.
The Canadians anymore. Just traded for Patrick Laine, who is now hurt.
No.
That doesn't make sense at all.
All right, so now we're going to go to Twitch and YouTube. Go check out our Twitch, twitch.tv/crashspawn, or go check out our YouTube, youtube.com/crashspawn. But we got this question from Austin Price saying, fortunately, the Ducks play in a non-traditional market without media pressure, but at what point do pressures on GM and head coach start to show after this upcoming season if they don't get out of the bottom 5 at least?
Oh, so now I remember what I was going to say. I am a little concerned about some things that the way Greg Cronin is coaching this team, because we were talking about this the other day. Just the fact that they have all these skill guys, and how we were saying earlier that Zegras hasn't been really put in a great position up until now. I feel like sometimes the way that they play this very high pressure man on man in the D zone, high pressure forecheck, it's just a lot of skating. It's a lot of energy expended. And I feel like sometimes that's what leads to these extended possessions where they're just stuck in their own zone, because I feel like guys just get tired. And I feel like maybe if they went to a less aggressive style, that it would just give them more energy in the offensive zone. It would make it easier to break out of the defensive zone because you're not like all over scrambled and chasing guys around. But that remains to be seen. Remains to be seen.
And then,
yeah.
Breezy from Twitch said,
but to answer the other question.
Oh yeah, we never even answered the question. Sorry.
I mean, so we were talking about this the other day, but there is no pressure this season. Like, quite frankly, there may be a little bit more pressure than there was last year, but Greg Cronin will not be fired this year under almost any circumstance. It would have to be a disaster of a season for him to be fired.
They would have to finish last.
Yeah, and I'm talking like in season, there's no chance he gets fired, and after the season, I just think he gets another shot at it next year. And I think that that's honestly fair, because he was brought in to rebuild this team and to then build something, and 2 seasons just feels like a kind of a baseline time that you give a coach to do that. And then next season, I think the expectations start turning up a little bit. As for Pat Verbeek, I think he's got all the runway in the world.
Yeah.
I think that he has full buy-in from ownership. And so we're talking years down the line for that in terms of pressure.
Yeah. So. Breezy asks, why do you think the Ducks have so many stupid rumors? I feel like it's way more than any other team I follow. I think it's just hockey in some ways. I think once
every team has stupid rumors.
I feel like once there's one legit rumor about a player, I feel like then it just spirals from that point. Like, I still say with the Zegras stuff, I have no doubt that the information that Frank Saravelli had on him, that the Ducks and another team, or that another team spoke about Zegras, and that the Ducks were offered something. Elliot Friedman said that Pat Verbeek, not this past summer, but the summer before, when all this was popping up, that the Verbeek had something on his plate or on his table.
Well, it was all but confirmed. It was Kent Hughes and Pat Verbeek talking.
That there was a deal that Verbeek had to think hard about, and he ended up saying no. And that's something that I think gets forgotten in all of this, is that Verbeek said no to that deal at the end of this. And so once I feel like once a name gets out there, there's just so many aggregators, so many things like that. And especially with Zegras being this flashy player, it just creates this buzz.
Well, here's the other part of it too, is that the Ducks keep it very tight. They don't let anything out. And so the flip side of that is that if people are talking, there's not really a voice to counterbalance that, to fight what's being said. They just kind of let things happen.
Yeah. Yep.
So,
Nisrini Prihata said, are the Ducks not really attractive for big name players? Why do they struggle to sign good veteran players in free agency? We know Verbeek was trying to sign and offer big money to some players. I mean, quite frankly, it's simple. The Ducks were not a good team.
The players want to win.
Yeah. Like, you look at when the Ducks were in their contending window, guys were signing here. Like, there were plenty of players, like I'm thinking about like the Chris Stewarts of the world, like these veteran players that help you win. Like,
guys will take pay cuts even.
Guys will take pay cuts to come and play for teams.
Didn't Vermette get traded and then brought back, or am I misremembering?
Derek Grant was. Vermette wasn't.
Oh, Vermette, there was the rumor that would happen.
Yes.
Do those rumors ever come true, by the way?
Not sure.
I feel like every year it's like, oh, you can trade him and then bring him back.
Yeah.
People said that about Josh Manson.
And Nisrina brings up that the Sharks signed one. I mean, the Ducks, like, maybe not this past summer, but they signed Killorn, they signed Gudas, they signed Strome, they signed Vetrano. Like, the Ducks.
It's just really last summer that they struck out big time.
Yeah. And it seemed like they identified a couple players, and that was really it. Outside.
Yeah, they really wanted Marchessault or Stamkos, and realistically,
probably Pesce also.
A 2-time Cup winner in Stamkos was just not going to come spend the twilight of his career on a rebuilding team. And Marchessault is in a similar position, Stanley Cup winner with Vegas. Probably doesn't want, like, he's so used to winning. Why would he come babysit, the kids? It's funny. I've been doing this thing this season where I watch the games and I actually watch with the sound on, but I'll watch the away broadcasts, and every broadcast talks about the Ducks, like, average age in their youth. Like, that's all they talk about with the Ducks is, like, everybody is 20 to 23 or whatever. And I thought about that, like, just from a human perspective. It's like, I'm not in my early 20s anymore. And I'm like, if I was in the position of a veteran player, do I want to come play with a bunch of, like, kids on a team that's losing? Like, who am I even going to hang out with? Like, there's reasons, right? It's not necessarily anything that the Ducks did wrong.
Yeah,
they would have had to overpaid. And to bring up the Sharks example, it's like Sharks maybe overpaid a little bit for Tyler Toffoli to get him there. So,
Yep. Logan said, "What do we do with Dumoulin at the deadline? What is his trade value?" I think you just keep him.
I mean, that's another one, right? And by the way, that's a move that that Verbeek made.
And also on that, like, the Ducks had to pay, the Ducks got. Wait, am I misremembering? No, the Ducks paid to get Dumoulin. They got paid to take Fabry. I was confusing them in my own head.
Yes.
So Dumoulin, maybe. I mean, his trade value is probably like a second or third round pick, would be my guess. Maybe. Maybe a second.
Probably a third.
Like, I honestly think they just keep these guys.
Well, also, it's like if they end up trading Fowler, that's the one that I'd be looking out for. If they trade Fowler, then you call up a D-man, or you just go 6 or 7D and don't worry about it.
No.
But then if you also trade Dumoulin, like, your blue line is looking real young, and I'm just not sure if that's what they want. So I would expect that Dumoulin is here to stay. But that being said, Dumoulin may be here on the understanding that he is going to be traded. We don't know that, though.
Yep. Breezy asked us, and let's just end with this one because I'm getting sleepy over here. Saying, for Felix, he's been enjoying the breakdowns lately. What do you recommend to start learning the game strategically if he's only ever just watched games and never played?
Wow, what a great question. I don't have a great answer for you, unfortunately.
I actually have one.
Okay, go for it.
There's a really good book. I've read parts of it. I have not actually read the whole thing, but I am going to recommend it, called Tape to Space, Redefining Modern Hockey Tactics.
Yeah, that's a great shout. I would say that, honestly, so here's my tip for you, Breezy, is just go to Amazon and search for any hockey strategy book and read that. Because when I was a kid, that's kind of how I learned. I also just learned from, like, being coached and whatnot. I'm reading a book that's been on my shelf for a while that Daryl Belfry wrote called Belfry Offense, which I think is very insightful to learn different tactics. And so if you wanted to go pick that up and read it, you could. I just don't think it's that well written. And I also think it's a little advanced. So if you're trying to just learn the fundamentals, I would say, like, Hockey Plays and Strategies on Amazon by Mike Johnston. That could be one. He's a former coach. Tape to Space is also a good shout. It's $19 on Amazon, but there's a lot of resources out there. And like, by the way, I feel like this is a disclaimer I don't put out there enough, but, like, I am not some advanced hockey person. I just watch it a lot. I didn't play high level hockey. I didn't play in the pros. Like, I'm much closer to the average viewer than people might think. So, like, if you have a thought, if you have an idea and you're watching these videos, like, throw it in the comments. Like, we're all here to learn together. So,
another book I'd recommend that's not really a tactic book, but I think a good starting point, as we were talking about stats, for people out there that aren't familiar with stats and kind of where they got started, things like that. StatShot is a very, very good kind of starting point. It was pre-expected goals. So expected goals won't appear in there, but you at least can really get a starting point of where a lot of this came from. So StatShot, I would really recommend that book.
And another shout out that I should probably add is Elite Prospects, EP Rinkside, their YouTube channel. If you were to just watch those videos and see the breakdowns that David St. Louis and Mitch Brown do about players, it's very similar to what I do. I mean, I've copied a lot of what they do, and you will learn a lot from them. There's a lot of great YouTube channels where you can learn a lot about hockey. So I would say that YouTube is just a great resource for a lot of things.
Yep.
Oh, also, actually, one I want to give a shout out to is Virtual Hockey Scout. Go check him out. So, but I have some blind rankings for you, unless we've got questions.
Yeah, let's go for it.
I've got multiple categories up.
Okay.
But I'm not sure if you're going to be able to handle this, is my only issue.
Okay.
I have 3 categories we're going to run through. One is cartoon characters. One is legendary athletes. And one is footballers from the 2000s.
Let's just do all of it. Let's do all of it.
No, we are doing all of it.
Oh.
But are you capable of the 2000s footballers?
By footballers, are we talking about
Soccer.
European? Okay. That one would be tougher for me, but I could figure it out.
Okay. So, blind ranking 1 through 5. You have to rank the thing that I'm giving you. You don't know what's coming next, just so everyone knows the ground rules.
Okay.
Ruud van Nistelrooy.
Yeah. This is tough, because my football knowledge starts in 2013.
You can tap out. That's totally fair.
I'm just going to go with 3. I'm going to go 3. I'm gaming.
Oh, well, I already left the ranking. So we're going to start over. I don't know how to pronounce his name, but Ozil.
Oh, Mesut Ozil?
Yeah.
5. Arsenal player, 5.
5, okay. Alessandro Nesta.
Don't know who that is, which I guess maybe shows my knowledge, so 4.
4. John Terry. I know who that is.
3, Chelsea player, so 3. This is just where my pure fandom's going to come in on all this.
Karim Benzema.
2. I'm hoping there's a Spurs player at 1.
Your number 1 is Samuel Eto'o. I know who that is.
I'll take it.
Okay.
Yeah,
not too bad.
I'm very happy with Mesut Ozil being 5.
Yeah, I'm just happy that I know 4 out of 5 of these names. That's probably the last time I paid attention to soccer was the 2000s. So
big win for Tottenham today against Man City.
Is that why you're wearing the hat?
Yes, I am.
Is that a new Tottenham hat, by the way?
I've had this for a year. I bought it after you shamed my last one.
It was gross, dude. You don't put that on me. I'm honestly surprised that I was the person to shame you and not possibly someone that you live with. Just put it that way. Okay, let's go with legendary athletes. Blind ranking. Up first, Pele.
2.
Wow, aggressive start.
Yeah.
Not sure I feel about it. Cristiano Ronaldo. Another
4.
footballer. Wow. Okay. Ooh. I feel like I know what you're going to say, but I'm going to ask first. Lionel Messi.
1.
I like how these have all been soccer players.
I was about to say, is this another soccer one?
Mike Tyson.
3.
Okay, so your number 5 is Muhammad Ali. Oof.
Oh.
Bit of a miss.
Bit of a miss.
Yeah.
Bit of a miss.
Not too far off, though. Messi's a very respectable number 1.
Yeah.
But, yeah, Ali is,
Yeah.
Okay, we're finishing it off with cartoon characters.
Okay.
Bugs Bunny.
5.
Man, that's disrespectful. Okay. Moving on, Shrek.
4.
Really? I'm gonna give you a chance to change that.
No, I'm leaving open the opportunity. I'm gaming in the sense of there are so many good cartoon characters that I love. Both of those are fine, but there are plenty of really, really good options.
Winnie the Pooh.
I'll go 2.
Okay. Fair enough. Kim Possible. Ooh.
I don't know what could be coming next. Man, I want to put that 1, but I want to leave 1 open. I'm going 3.
Okay, your number 1 is Yogi Bear.
Oh, I don't like my list. Yogi Bear should be a 5.
Your list is backwards.
No, put Kim Possible 1, put Bugs Bunny 3, put Yogi Bear 5.
Your list is basically backwards.
No, Kim Possible 1.
That's not great.
You want to do? Let's do one more of the cartoon characters, and let's see if I get better ones.
I wanted to do another soccer one, but
no, do the cartoon again.
Okay,
Logan's
cartoon.
agreeing with me.
Cartoon. Okay, Winnie the Pooh.
3.
3. Okay. Now you're really gaming it. Ooh, Powerpuff Girls.
Oh, 2.
2. Okay. You're really gaming it. Johnny Bravo.
5.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say 5. Homer Simpson. Ooh.
Ooh. I think he has to go 1.
Yeah, I agree with you. And so your number 4 is Raphael from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yeah, this list came out right.
Yeah, this is much more respectable.
Much better. Much better options. Very much happier with that one.
Okay. All right. Are you satisfied?
I'm satisfied now. We can get on out of here.
Okay. Well, thank you for listening, everyone. If you've made it this far, you are a hero. You are a trooper. You deserve love and admiration. If you want to help support this show and keep it going and get even more content, the number one way to do that is to check out our Patreon page, patreon.com/crashthepond. The link is in the show description. For $2 a month, $2 monthly pledge, you get access to our patrons-only Discord server, and this is a great place for you to interact with us. So we're in there all the time, talking Ducks, talking hockey. You can ask us questions directly. We have a podcast questions channel, so you can throw in a question, and it gets priority for the next show. Derek Lee and Patrick Present of the Hockey News are also in there. So if you want to chat with them, ask them what's going on with the team, you can do that as well. A great community, and that's for $2 a month. You can also up that pledge to $7.50 per month. And so in addition to the Discord server, you also get access to bonus videos. So right now, after almost every game, I'm putting out videos about the power play. Sometimes it'll be honing in on a specific player, like for example, like we talked about, Zegras at center. So lots of videos there. And also you get access to 2 bonus podcasts a month. So if you love how we talk hockey, love how we talk just in general, you get more of us there. And also it's a little more unfiltered, a little more hot takery happens there. So recommend it. That's at patreon.com/crashthepond. Go check us out. You can also leave us a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts. We haven't gotten one in a while. We're on a little bit of a cold streak. So I'm just going to ask, please leave one. We love to hear from you. You can also leave us feedback and subscribe on Spotify. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, video content there. Follow us on social media. Check out our website, Crash the Pond. Vibes HC. It's back.
Shirts are still available.
Shirts are available.
Maybe I should put in some work to recolor them with the rest of our vibes here. So that may be coming at some point.
But yeah, I mean, if the Ducks go on a little winning streak here, maybe the Vibes shirts will get hot again. But
yeah.
With all that being said, thank you for listening, everyone. We love you guys. We appreciate you. And we'll talk to you next week. Have a good one.
Happy Halloween!
Boo.